the bench interior all partitioned and painted, and that's basically the finished product. There we go. Welcome back. My name's Jax, and I'm taking this Ford E350 cargo van and converting it into an RV. I'm going to work on the table, the segmented table. Now I've already ripped it down. You can see the thin narrow strip there. I ripped that down to accommodate the width in between the bench seats here. Now it won't fit in here as is because it's going to be a fuzz type, but by the time I make two more rip cuts down this, it should be good. And what do I mean by 2 more rip cuts? Well, what I'm going to do for starters is I'm going to segment this table into 3 sections. So I got a line here, so there are 3 even tables. So the reason I'm doing that is for, well, one, mobility. It's this piece of butcher block is pretty darn heavy, so having it in smaller pieces is going to facilitate, you know, much easier handling when I gotta turn it into bed mode. Now the second reason is because I built this bench seats to accommodate a full queen size bed lengthwise, which is about 80 inches. Unfortunately, this butcher block is not 80 inches. We're quite a bit short. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to evenly space these tables out between 5 spaces. So I've got to go, what is that, 6 inches. So they'll be about 6 1/4 inches in between each table, roughly, I think, if I did the math in my head right. I don't know. Either way, so these will be, when these are down in bed mode, they won't reach the full mattress length, but there'll be just a small gap, and that should be okay. That should be fine. We'll figure it out. If I have to come up with another solution to span that, that's all right. We'll figure that out. But that's all I could get. I couldn't get these any longer. Okay, so the other thing that I'm going to do here is, not only are these tables going to be about 2 foot wide, but they're also going to be cut along this line and this line. So what I'm going to do is use these Butler hinges, same as I used on the countertop extension, and what this is going to allow me to do is fold up and lay over these sections onto itself. So instead of having, how wide is this? Instead of having it 30 inches, it'll only be 15 inches wide. So that'll give us a little bit of a walkway in between the, so we're not, you know, scooching all the way down or whatever, and then it'll also facilitate easier handling too when I go to move and put them into bed mode. These will also work out nice for when this is in the lower position. It'd be like a coffee table, perhaps. I guess it's not much. Guess it's not going to be much room. We're only going to have 7 inches of room here in between, so maybe a coffee table maybe isn't going to work out. But that's the plan with the way it's going to work out here. So 3 tables, and then I don't need to deploy all 3 tables when I'm in, you know, when I'm not sleeping on the bed. Now by myself, I'll be able to sleep on one bench all by itself, no problem. But if I happen to get myself a scratch that. So I should be able to sleep on one of these benches by myself easily without deploying it into bed mode, and so that way we can either have one or two of these stowed, and then those like I figured out that we're gonna have room here in this space here in this cabinet to be able to stow these, so that'll be nice. So I don't need to have all three sections out at the same time. So yeah, that'll work out pretty slick. But at any rate, that's what we're working on right now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rip cut the length, and then I'll lay out and mortise these hinges in, and then I'll cross cut the tables sections in half then, or in each three sections, so that way they'll all be in pretty good matching sets. So hopefully I don't muck it up, because this was a pretty expensive piece of butcher block, so we'll see how that's going to work out. All right, so success with the rip cuts. They turned out pretty good. I got them clamped together again here. Hit the edges with 80 grit and the palm sander, and lightly campered the edges there with the sandpaper, and just to take the burrs off. And now I've got it all laid out here. Hinges roughly about 8 inches from each end, which leaves a little bit, about 8, 8 1/4, 8 1/2 right here in the mid, which is fine. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoops, I missed one. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 sets of hinges to mortise in. So it's going to take a minute to lay out and route them out. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get my hinges on my marks. I got a little pilot hole there. I'm going to throw a screw in there to hold the hinge, get it square, and then I'm going to trace around it, and then do that for each one. So what will happen is that hole should transfer down. Well, it won't matter anyways. But at least the hinges will stay straight and square, and it'll be good. So all right, let's get our pencil sharpened. Should actually get a better pencil here, but I think this will be okay. There we go. One down. Just like that. Well, they're not uber pretty, but they'll do. Now we're gonna cross cut the table sections, and we'll do a round over and round over with a router, and then they'll be ready for polyurethane. All right, well, everything is cut and mortised and sanded, ready for polyurethane. And so here's where It's a little bit crooked because of the way I got it supported under there, but that's basically the gist. So when they're folded out, they're going to span all the way across, and then they'll fold up, and it'll be kind of like a coffee table. A little bit of space there to get your legs and squish by and walk by, so it won't be so terrible, hopefully. Oh yeah, and while I was at it, this is the drop-in cutting board out of the kitchen sink. African mahogany this will make a nice cutting board, but because we have a butcher block countertop, this I was able to salvage out of the cutout for the sink itself, so now we have a drop-in block exactly the same as the rest of the counter. So I get some mineral oil and lather that up, and that'll be done. All right, well, finish up the day with a little painting. Got the these are the bench seat covers. I'm just going to paint the top. The bottom I'm going to have to glue some furring strips too for the hatches, because we're going to have some openings, some hatch openings in these, so that way we can reach in and grab stuff without having to pick up the whole sheet. An example would be a hatch for this compartment, and probably, you know, 1 or 2 hatches for that long compartment there. And we'll do the same thing over here once we figure out where and how all the electrical is going to fit. But for now, that piece will remain solid. But that's the plan. So that's it for today for me down here. Not much else I can do, wait for paint to dry, but I've got all of them, the table sections up in the house. I can throw a coat of polyurethane on there. I gotta get those coated here in next couple of days, so in between everything else, we'll get those going. But I'm excited about seeing what they're going to look like in here. I've been waiting to see. They're going to take up a lot of space, those 3 tables, but it'll be nice. Like I said, they'll be modular, so you can have 1, 2, or 3 of those table sections in place. More than likely, we'll just I'll just have one centrally located for the bulk of things, and if I got company or whatever, we'll pull out a section or 2 sections, just depending. But we'll have it. At any rate, I'm going to come down here in a couple hours and close this up, put these inside so they don't get wet. I got a few things I got to take up in the house so it doesn't freeze. It's getting colder at night, starting to drop temperature again. So, but it's getting sunset. Too bad I can't see it from down here. All right, man. We're gonna call it a good day. Okay, so I finally, after trials and tribulations, managed to get these Butler tables polyurethane. Bit of a challenge, obviously, trying to get a nice, reasonably decent finish, and enough coats on there to help protect it. So I think I'm pretty much there. I've got 4 or 5 good coats on there, sanded in between. Not too bad. They look pretty decent. Pretty happy with them. So now I'm going to take and mount my hinges, and also lay out and mount the bases. That will go on the underside of this table, and then eventually lay out and prepare and drill the base part of the connection that goes in the floor. So there's going to be 3 bases, 3 tables, all together. And like I said earlier, we'll have enough room in this cupboard space here to stow at least 2 of them. So I don't have to have table up all the time, the entire table. So, but that's the plan. So I'm gonna go ahead and mount these hinges now. Bit of a sweat going on here with this jacket, but now these okay. Mark these so that I knew which way they went. Go. I do have a few screws already drilled when I first laid these out, so those should, when they're okay. Now the mortises aren't perfect, but they'll do. I like it. What do you think? I think it'll work pretty darn good. Alright, now we got to get center line on here. Alright, so I got a center line this way, 12 1/4, and I'm going to measure about 4 3/8 each side here. And that should give me pretty reasonable center. So got some screws here. Till I drop it. Oof. No one's home. There we go. That's what I thought. Not going to be. Wow, what's. Okay. Like that. Yeah, more or less like that. Not too bad. Not too shabby. It's got to go down. It's got to get, you know, recessed some more down into the floor, but that's it right there. So, all right. So, these are upside down, obviously, but spaced out about how I'm going to want it. You know, obviously they're not exactly the right, you know, there's a gap between each table. And the reason for that was the butcher block that I purchased just wasn't long enough. So it didn't matter anyways, because I intended on splitting it like this anyways. This will offer a lot of different options for me, I think. So with it being up, we'll have a full table for 6 people comfortably, and I could stow 1 or 2 of the tables, or even 3 of the tables, or we can lower them down in this position like this with the butler hinge parts folded up so that it's more like a coffee table. Maybe it'll be comfortable, I don't know, but we'll see. At any rate, I kind of got the measurements sorted out, and now I'll lay out the center line. I got in the position where I'm going to put the bases, and then we'll drill those holes. So that's the next step. All right, so I got my 3 spots, center line, and this one's in the center, and then I've got these offset about 13¼ inches from the ends, and that'll give me my spacing. Now the other benefit, I'm going to drill a slightly larger hole so that way I'll have the ability to move this around a little bit. Once the table's set, then I can screw it down with it in place, so that way I know it's going to fit. There's no issue with it being offset one way or the other, because this is a snug fit in here. So that's it. So I won't be able to mount these here until I get the flooring in. This is not going to suffice. I'm going to rip through that battery pretty quick. So let's use the drill. Let's try and use the drill, not hurt myself. There we go. There we go. Yeah, it gives me a little bit of room, not too oversized. That's the goal. Nice and flush. Shouldn't trip over that. Woo. All right, that's that. Okay, so here is bed mode. It's a little droopy because the flooring. It's a little droopy because we're missing the flooring. That'll bring that up just a fuzz, and then that'll be bed mode. That'll be where the mattress will, they'll pull together and be supported. There'll be, of course, 3 of these, and then there's coffee table. So a nice low table. You can, it's not sticking up or anything. Just sit there and have. Or we can turn. We can turn this way if we wanted. Again, just basically coffee table mode. It'll be a little bit lower. It'll be cushions up to here, so it's probably a little lower than what coffee table would be normally, but that's essentially what that is. And then once I replace this, of course, comes out here a lot easier once it's mounted down and we go into table mode. There's your table mode. Of course, you'll be able to turn it that way too if you wanted, but essentially this will be here, and then that way you can scooch by. I mean, it's not huge space, but at least you could scooch by. But otherwise, if you want to go in full table mode, then these will come out, and now you'll have, by the time you get your cushion on here, it'll be at a pretty good height to be able to have dinner. So again, there'll be 3 of these, so you could easily sit 6-8 people here. But like I say, you don't have to have all 3 table sections out either. Only when you're going to need your bed mode. But that's essentially that's that. And then I got 3 of them. So once I get the flooring installed, then I can mount the bases, and then the tables are all set and ready to go. So they should be in a pretty good deal. Not perfect, but they'll do. Nice. Be able to play cards. So, pretty neat. Thank you very much for tuning in. Be sure to check out next week's video. And if you like the content, be sure to like and subscribe.